So here we go. I have an interesting problem here sent in by one of my students, is to simplify this complex fraction, and we see the different choices of the answer. I don't show them all here, but we're not going to really worry about that. They're all in the form of a plus bi, where there's a real part and there's an imaginary part, and there's no denominator with complex numbers in the denominator. That's actually the main point. So we're going to have to go about simplifying this. One way you could do it is simplify this denominator first. 1 plus 1 over 1 plus I. We're just going to work on that. That's 1 plus I over 1 plus I. That's what 1 is. Plus 1 over 1 plus I. So we have the common denominator. That equals 2 plus I over 1 plus I. So now our fraction is 1 over 2 plus I over 1 plus I. Now we have a fraction in the denominator. Whoops. This means 1 divided by 2 plus I over 1 plus I. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this. This would have been something probably from a long time ago in school. If you're dividing by a fraction, you can, I heard this phrase from students, keep, change, flip. Keep the 1, change the dividing to multiplying, and flip the fraction. That equals 1 times 1 plus I over 2 plus I. And of course, that does equal 1 plus I over 2 plus I. But we're still left with having to get that denominator with a complex number in the denominator and get rid of that. So let me start over. Let me erase all this. And we'll start with 1 plus I over 2 plus I. Let me show all the choices here. Okay. So we simplified that to be 1 plus I over 2 plus I. Now we have a more normal type of problem. We want to simplify that. To get rid of the complex or the imaginary part that's in the denominator, we multiply both the numerator and denominator by, it's called the complex conjugate of the denominator. Same numbers to an I, but the opposite sign. So of course we have to multiply numerator and denominator by that. We'll get to the numerator later. The denominator is in that form 2 plus something times 2 minus something. That is a form that if you FOIL that out, the outside term and the inside term always cancel out. We're just left with the first term squared, which is 4, minus the last term squared, which is I squared. I squared is negative 1, so 4 minus negative 1 is actually 5. So the denominator is 5. The numerator, 1 plus I times 2 minus I. We're going to FOIL that out. First, 1 times 2. Outside, 1 times negative I. Inside, I times 2. Last, I times negative I, which is negative I squared. Negative I squared. I squared is negative 1, so it's negative 1. That's plus 1. So when you FOIL out a complex number, you always can combine the first term and the last term. They're both real. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then negative I plus 2I is plus I. That's over 5. So split it into 2 parts. 3 over 5 plus 1/5 I. 3 over 5 plus 1/5 I. That's D. That should be right. Anyhow, that's how you do it. Okay? Let me show you an alternative. And it would work out the same way. It's just a different way of going about it. So our fraction from the beginning, we could have just multiplied by something, numerator and denominator. That would get rid of that fraction in the denominator entirely, and that would be 1 plus I over 1 plus I. When we multiply the numerator by 1 plus I, we just get 1 plus I. When we multiply the denominator, 1 plus I times 1 is 1 plus I, and 1 plus I times 1 over 1 plus I is just 1. So we get right to that stage we were at before, 1 plus I over 2 plus I. And then we have to do the same thing. So that's just a different way of getting to that same point. Then you multiply by 2 minus I over 2 minus I. And you just go from there with the steps that we did before. So that's how you do it. I hope this makes some sense. And I will send this link out to the students so they can look at this. And if you have any kind of question you'd like to see me talk about, then just text it to me. Email it to me, larry@onourway.life. And those people who are already my students have my phone number to text me, but I don't want to give that out in a video. So, bye-bye.